So in this video, I want to mention something that I've been asked a lot. How do I use a camera? Or hey, I just got this camera, how do I use this thing? Mostly different variations of the same question. It's kind of interesting to see how different they come up with this stuff. By the time you're done with this video, you'll have a good foundation to how the camera settings work all together to get that perfect exposure that you desire. So go ahead and grab your camera, look at that dial or that scroll that shows all the different modes, and scroll all the way down to that M manual mode, and let's get started. So the first thing I want to bring up is shutter speed. Shutter speed is actually kind of broken up into two different things. You got shutter and you got the speed. They're not even one word either. It's kind of really two different words. The actual shutter in a camera is located right on top of the sensor or in front of the sensor. When you press the shutter button to take a picture on your camera, that shutter opens to take the picture, and then as soon as the picture's done, it closes right back down. Now getting into that speed part, the speed is actually measured in seconds. That's also another way to spot it on a camera. You'll usually see a number like 125 or 4000 or 250. If not just those numbers, you'll see 1 over 250 or 125. So now using kind of basic math here of fractions, the faster your shutter speed is, so like 1 over 4000, that's pretty fast, the faster your camera will be able to snap that picture, eliminating that motion blur from the movement. The slower your shutter speed is, like 15 seconds flat, the slower your camera will be able to capture that image, creating more motion blur. Now you may be wondering, well, why is that even a feature? I don't want any motion blur in my image. Well, there's some images that require a slower shutter speed to get the right amount of motion blur, and that actually comes out pretty nice. Now moving on to that second pillar, you got aperture. So pretty much what aperture is like a hole in your camera lens. So aperture is usually measured in what we call f-stop. If we have an f-stop of about 1.4, you'll have that hole in your lens be about this big, letting a whole lot of light in. But ultimately what that f-stop of 1.4 does, having that bigger hole in your camera lens, is putting that background more out of focus and putting your subject more in focus, giving your subject more depth of field. Does that make sense? Essentially, it's just giving yourself a blurry background. Moving on the other side of the meter, if you have an f-stop of maybe 14 or higher, that bigger hole will get kind of smaller, letting less light in, putting your background more in focus, creating you less depth of field. So if you're trying to get like a wide landscape photo, then you want to boost that aperture kind of higher if you want to get everything in focus. All these settings messes with your exposure. So going back to shutter speed, if you raise your shutter speed higher, then you're letting less light in. Lower, then you're letting more light in. Same thing with aperture. But I think this last pillar may help a little bit with that. Going on to the third pillar, we got ISO. Now, back in the olden days, your grandparents might remember this. Back in the days when film was more popular, you used to be able to buy different types of film that had different types of ISO on them. Now, what ISO really is essentially what everybody says, it's fake light. If your exposure isn't right, if you mess with your shutter speed, mess with your aperture, and you think that your shutter speed and aperture is just the way you want it, try looking at your ISO. If your ISO is about at 100, then you could probably raise it up a bit more. But beware, because like shutter speed and aperture, how they have their downfalls with letting less or more light in. With ISO, if you raise the ISO too much, you might start being able to see more grain and noise in your image. You now know the three things to pretty much rock out manual mode. Well, that's the fabulous thing about the internet nowadays. You know, you learn something new every day. Now I want you to go pick up that camera that you didn't know to use before, go shoot some stuff. Not literally shoot some stuff with your camera. Comment down below what camera you currently have or what camera you're looking into getting. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Just something short and informational for you. If you didn't know how to use before, now you do. Now go out there in the wilderness and show the world that you can use a camera now. Goodbye. Have a nice time. Oh, and I also forgot to tell you, what I forgot to tell you is that ISO is the sensitivity of light to your sensor. Hey, everything you're learning now, it's the foundation. Like I said, just build upon this stuff, learn more about it, and you'll be good to go, ready to rock. You got it. Hey, you got it. Stick with me and you'll...